To the City of Iceni City Council, City Committee of a Whole meeting for Tuesday, June 16th at 5 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could all rise for Pledge Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doing roll call, all council members are present. I would assume there's no public comment at this time, since there's nobody in the audience. So we'll move right on to silencing Councilmember Egley's cell phone. E1, the Public Works updates, Mr. Sylvester.
Mayor Johnson and members of City Council, Public Works updates. So streets, crews took advantage of an early spring and have been out patching potholes. Public Works has applied over 36 tons of hot patched potholes this spring. Street painting has begun, and this year all crosswalks, stop bars, and parking lots are going to be painted. Storm, crews have completed our spring cleanup of sweeping streets and will be sweeping as needed throughout the summer. The sewer, the filter underdam work at the wastewater treatment facility was completed. The nozzles, media, and piping from the blower building were all replaced. The filters are back in process and they're working great. We replaced one air release valve to the force main from 8th Avenue lift station. Air release valves have also been flushed on all force mains. We flush them quarterly. Air release valves are installed at the high points in the force main to allow air out when the pumps start and in when the pumps shut off to prevent surges in the line itself. They periodically need to be cleaned or flushed of grease and grit to keep them functioning properly. Water, well house 2 had a check valve that wasn't sealing. The leaking valve was causing our influent pressure to drop when the wells weren't running, which in turn was causing alarms when the wells would start up. Public Works has replaced that valve and some of the piping in that well house. Parks, crews have started fogging for mosquitoes and will continue throughout the summer. Spraying for dandelions was completed in all parks. Spraying for weeds in parking lots and sidewalks was completed. We will continue to monitor them throughout the summer, which I see some of them are starting to come back again now. Wood chips have been added to the playgrounds at all the parks. The compost site is open and continues to be busy. The farmers market has opened up, and as of now we have 10 returning vendors and 5 new vendors with a different number that come weekly. And the community garden opened up on May 7th.
Any questions, comments, or concerns by the council for Mr. Sylvester?
On the dirt at the compost, I know we kind of set aside a bunch of that for the sledding hill, right? So do we still have a lot of people, I know Jeff, you and I talked about that. Do we still have a lot of people coming that are trying to get dirt that can't get it, or?
Heard anything from the compost, the seasonals are working the compost site lately on any of that. We kind of moved some stuff around over there.
Okay.
But as far as the seasonals have said, they haven't said anything to me lately. So unless you've heard something, I haven't heard anything lately.
Okay.
There was just 2 or 3 at the beginning, and then it died down.
So it hasn't really been a problem.
No,
lately.
I just reassured them that the city does cut the grass of about 300 acres, I believe, is what me and Ms. Wood came up with. So the city contributes to that as well as every resident within the city.
Sure.
So we haven't taken from it and used it for anything. Mm-hmm. And now that it's our time, everybody wants to raise stink. And I understand because of the COVID thing, everybody is home trying to do projects, but so are we. Mm-hmm. So with that understanding, they understood, and then it was that I reassured them that Mr. Sylvester would figure something out as far as screening some more, and by fall is what we talked about.
We generally screen in the fall, yeah.
And
That's when the compost is ready to be screened again.
And there'll be some available to them again.
Okay.
And everybody seemed to be A-okay with it. Good job as always, Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you.
Oh, mosquitoes, by the way. They're getting bad again.
We've been out, I have that honor, we sprayed or fogged the northwest corner the first time just to get the bugs out of the machine. We sprayed last week again, early last week I think it was, and it's just kind of when we start hearing stuff, we'll start spraying again. I've had a couple people that have called me on mosquito spraying. The biggest thing they want to know is what is that thing driving down my yard in the middle of the night? It's apparently really loud. So inform them of that, you know, what it is and when we do it. It's really, don't know how often we're gonna have to do it. It could be once a week, could be once a month. It's just kind of when we need it, we'll do it. So,
I just explained to him that you're in a learning curve right now.
yeah.
You know, and you're trying to learn when you should and when you shouldn't.
And a lot of that is weather dependent as well.
Right.
As far as wind speeds and all that kind of stuff to go out. and
The
spread.
most thing I got was, well, think Public Works or think the council, or I got more positive than negative. Actually, I don't think I got zero negative. Everybody's been pretty positive about it. But you're right, they're wondering, what is that white truck driving around with a loud thing on it doing?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
We usually have the strobe light on at Cambridge, and it gives people a chance to go close their windows if they choose to.
Yeah, we posted on the city's website and on Facebook when we've gone out and sprayed. Tried to do it early in the day when we know we're gonna spray that night so that they're aware of what's happening.
Do we have the strobe light on in the truck?
No.
Maybe we oughta. Then they'll know it's the city, not somebody COVIDing them or something.
But it's just something they get used to, like Cambridge residents, they see the strobe light.
Yeah.
Sometimes they tell the kids to come inside, or they close their windows in their house.
Because strobe lights produce seizures or something, right? Because I know bus drivers, when they're driving around in bad weather, they're supposed to, when they get close to school, they're supposed to turn off their strobe lights.
Yeah.
He's saying turn them on so they're aware the city's
Aware
spraying.
that they're
No,
all
but
fogging.
I'm saying, he's saying the kids go inside during it.
Yeah, because you don't want your,
Some do. It depends on the household. Some people worry about getting the stuff on their skin or whatever, so they,
their thought is they're spraying for mosquitoes, everybody get in, let's close the windows, but we're organically spraying. So really, you could go drink that stuff, and I don't think you'd be harmed.
Well, you go right in.
I mean, I wouldn't try it,
You'd
but
be the first one in line, I think. Maybe
Councilmember
the last
Carlson,
one.
what time do you guys spray in Cambridge?
usually 9 at the earliest.
same time we
So
are, right,
Typically,
Matt?
it's like between 9 and midnight,
Yeah, same time Matt is.
so, yeah.
I have a question for Councilman Collison and Matt over there. How about, like, we got the fireworks coming up. Do you time that in Cambridge, or
We spray before fireworks.
like right before, or 2 days before? Or?
No, it usually depends on the weather, but either the night before or that day of the fireworks. But it's hard to do it that day because people get there early. So typically it's the night before. We spray the grounds and everywhere, thinking people, they sit everywhere to watch the fireworks. They sit in Menards, they sit in developments,
Yeah.
you know. So we typically spray before the fireworks. So, and that's if the weather cooperates. Obviously, if it's raining the night before, it's pretty tough. So
Yeah.
you got to kind of watch the forecast. Maybe you need to do it 2 nights prior, you know, or, you know. Bad thing is once it rains, it washes, it adheres to like leaves on trees and grass and things like that. And when the mosquitoes come in contact with it, that's how they die. But if it's washed off from rain, then it doesn't, you know, affect anything really well, so.
Yeah.
Good.
Councilor Burley, that's definitely something we can put on the, to do that week that we're, for the fireworks to go out and fog that week.
Street
Think it
dances
is.
as well. I mean,
Yeah.
typically in downtown, I don't recall having a problem with mosquitoes just because there's so much asphalt and not a lot of standing water or things like that, but,
Yeah.
but that's the nice thing about owning your own machine. You can go out and spray before those big events.
Yeah.
The people are outdoors, especially in the late evening hours.
Sure. Yeah. We'll definitely consider that.
Yeah. Does anyone spray the bike path?
Cambridge has never sprayed the bike paths.
Okay.
That's nature, Councilman Berkeley.
Oh, I don't really care. I just,
Keep biking, they won't catch up.
That's part of riding your bike.
Faster.
Yeah.
well, I mean, here's, the only reason I ask is I keep track of the fireflies. I'm telling you, 5 years ago, it was like a Christmas display out there. They were so thick, it was amazing. And then they kind of died off. Now this year, like when I was out there last night at about 10:30, and they're close to as amazing as they were 5 years ago, but not quite. So I was just wondering, maybe the mosquito spray was affecting the fireflies, so. I can bike pretty fast, so. don't
Maybe they're
worry.
migrating because of what we're spraying. I
I'm
see a
tell-
lot
I'm
of
telling you, 5 years
dragonflies.
ago, Isani was the firefly capital of the world, so guaranteed.
Huh.
It was amazing. Take your kids out there, they'll love it.
They're in bed by
I
that
noticed a
time.
difference though the first night after you
I
guys
was
went
talking
out
to somebody the other day.
Take your oldest.
He did.
in our backyard.
She's in bed.
Good, Counselor, that's what I've heard too, is a lot of positives right away.
Yep.
Is what I've got.
Before that, I'd fog myself, but now I don't have to.
Hey, I built a brand new deck at my house, which I pulled a permit on, asked Miss Selman. And I can actually sit on my deck and enjoy it now because we're spraying for mosquitoes. I've gotten over a dozen compliments that we can actually sit in our yard and enjoy our outdoor life now because you're spraying.
Mayor and Council, let me know when the bugs do come out, because I will go back out, we'll do it. My relay is to you as to what I'm getting back for mosquitoes, so let me know, that informs me when I need to go back out.
Good job all
Thank you.
around either way, Mr. Sylvester.
We've used mosquito counters in the past. Actually collect mosquitoes and you count how many are in there and meet so many. But it's a real big hassle. It's easier just to rely on, like we rely on the public works people that live in town.
Yeah.
All the mosquitoes at your house. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's one positive
Works.
thing is the community is very boisterous in the city.
Yeah.
So I think we would definitely know. I didn't even know they had mosquito counters.
yeah, it's a machine that traps them. It's got a light and it's on a timer. It turns on at dusk when the mosquitoes get bad. And then you can,
That sounds like more money, and Mr. Becker's not going to let us spend anymore.
well,
so.
it's not so much money. It's time consuming because someone's got to go count, actually take the tray out and you count how many mosquitoes are in there. If it's a certain percentage and you go spray, it's really, we don't do it anymore. It's just a hassle. And unless you got like 20 counters all over the city, because they're different from this side of town to that side of town to the river side, so they're
I've
really-
actually heard people on Rum River complimenting spraying as well. So you must be doing something right. It must be working.
Must be, we're getting good compliments back, so that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, that was the worst area of them all. Is I got a friend over there. I'd go
horrible
and
over there.
yeah, I had a friend over there. You'd go to his house and literally get out of your van and that's.
When I bought my
Jeez, I
car.
can't even get out. Now I was just there 2 days ago, and I was like, well, there ain't no mosquitoes. He's like, no, it's been great since Public Works has sprayed.
Good deal, thank you.
All right, let's move on to E2, the housing study update. Ms. Selman, I'm assuming that's you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the 2020 goal setting, the City Council directed staff to look into updating the city housing study. Through our GPS 4593, which we have a membership to, the Humphrey School student group was doing a research housing project for East Central Minnesota, and that includes Isanti. So at our March COW meeting, we discussed waiting to see what their study produces and take a look at that and see if we need to do our own. So I just put in some of the key findings that it looks like what we're looking at here is there's a strong need for additional affordable housing in East Central Minnesota, particularly outside the major population centers. There's a growing need for senior housing and overall diversifying of housing stock in East Central Minnesota. And they've identified some prioritizing and implementation of these 5 key policies. That's all within the report. So basically, based on the growing demand due to the economic growth patterns that we see in Isanti itself, it looks like we do need more affordable housing and senior housing, according to this study. I think that this is a great update to what we have. I leave it up to the council to see if we want to conduct our own or if we want to just go with their study.
I'd say go with their study.
I agree.
Yeah, it looks pretty thorough. I would stick with theirs.
Did you guys get a copy of the study? I just saw this one page kind of, and then it went to the liquor store study.
Yeah, it's only listed E2 in our packet. No study.
I would think the most important thing we should look at is more senior housing than more affordable housing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of common sense, and the developers are gonna do their own research when they come to town anyway, so,
I concur.
yeah, I think it's good.
I know I talked to one developer that those one-level homes, they attract the younger people and the seniors. So it's, you know, it's not a, you know, a high rise or anything, but
Across from me is 55 plus housing, and I would say 3/4, if not a little more, is in fact 55 plus. But you have a few in there that are young
yeah.
that they let in, but overall it's pretty quiet.
So whatever happened to that RIT or whatever it was called, that was gonna add another housing or apartments or high-end apartments
Walker?
over here on the other side of 65?
No,
That was a couple of years ago that they were gonna do that.
Didn't we renew them once? Like,
Are you
they
talking
came
about the
through
senior
and we
Prairie
did it once.
cottages?
No.
Along 8th, right?
I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, right across from the school on the north side of Heritage Boulevard. There were, because I think we, like Councilman Burgley said, that they asked to have it extended another year. I think they just did that not that long ago.
Councilmember Lindy, to my knowledge, that has not come up in the last few years. It's not been talked about at other committees or discussions for at least
not in the year
a
I've
few
been here.
years. So,
I remember,
You remember us discussing that?
yeah, because it was supposed to be a really high.
Yeah,
It was gonna-
Councilman Burgley
Had a
just said it was
gym
before
in the
my
center,
time.
Pool.
They were gonna go to high end, they were
Supposed
gonna
to be
put
a
all
really-
granite tops in the kitchens, and they were gonna go a little higher end for apartments. To,
They were trying to attract a older population.
yep.
So
And
that
that,
I don't think they were calling
That
it
was-
senior housing, but
That was before
No.
my time,
It was a
so
while ago, but. I-
what
Yeah.
happened?
Mr. Mayor, I haven't seen anything in the year that I've been here, so I
I-
don't, I can't, I don't know
I
what
wonder,
happened.
wouldn't it behoove you to reach out to them again and see what their interests were still on that?
I know
I
that-
think it's RIT or, it's that they own those apartments that are over there. Cause it's in
Right by
that
the
same
cemetery,
thing.
right by the cemetery.
Yeah, just on the east side of the cemetery.
people,
Yep,
oh, we're talking about Evergreen Apartments.
because they were talking about doing that and they were gonna go to a higher end rental apartments.
Is there, I know when they were discussing when we talked about before over by Teddy Bear Care, that high rise, the Walker. Assisted living,
was Prairie
is that,
Homes,
where is
wasn't
that at?
Yeah, that's on hold.
Is it?
Yeah.
Cause didn't they build down on 65 by the theater?
No, that's a different company. That's actually a competitor.
But
there.
he's taking that in consideration because that one was built. He built a new one in Cambridge. So for him to
think that-
land here right now,
I don't know, they have a really good reputation. I think they'll get people.
I
Yeah,
would think so too, but.
I would agree. It's not a never, it's a not now. Waiting to
Okay.
see how things pan out. And we got Prairie Senior Cottages, which is planning, did they break ground?
And Prairie Senior Cottages, I forgot,
They've
they,
been talking about
they
that
expanded.
for a long time.
Yep, and
it's
they
finally
did
gonna
re-up it
happen.
though. They've been talking about it for actually like 6 years,
Yeah.
but they did re-up at their application and we actually thought that it was going to start already.
And it has not.
But unfortunately, we're not the ones that are gonna, we know what we'd like to see. It's all about the developer and the builder, what they're gonna build, so.
It'd be nice to see the study from the Humphrey School student group.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I apologize, I didn't realize that wasn't attached here, that somehow just one page got attached, but do you want me just to email it to you guys?
Yeah, email it to all the council members and myself if you would.
Yep.
Then we could look into it, but I'm with Councilman Lundin. I mean, I would think we would be justified to go with just their study as long as we look at it and we liked it.
I don't see
But
any
I'd have to
reason
see the
spend
study
any money on
first.
it.
I don't see any reason to spend any more money on it, is my point.
No, exactly.
As long as, if it's good, then we go with their study.
Yeah, I think they did a really good, this is really loud. I think they did a really good job with their study, and it's a good update for the area, and I think it suffices kind of for what we need for the next 5 years. And then maybe in 5 years, look to do our own.
Maybe, yeah. I think it's loud because we're so used to having earbuds in and having a screen in front of us, and now we're actually hearing one another for once. I can't wait till Mr. Becker talks or Mr. Jacoby talks, then they'll be real loud.
You
All right,
gotta
let's
admire a
move-
guy that wears a tie in the heat, so. good
He
job.
always wears a tie. I don't think I've ever seen him without one.
What about these two women that are wearing sweaters?
Well, that's our freeze baby, and that one I don't. Normally she's warm just like I am.
It's 91 degrees outside at this moment.
I'm a freeze baby and I'm wearing shorts.
Which blows me out of the water. All right, let's move on to E3, the liquor store market study. Mr. Jacoby.
Well, I think Mr. Becker is going to talk first.
Okay.
and we'll
Well,
go
you guys
after
are
that.
sitting next to each other, you
Yep.
know, paper,
Yep.
scissors, rocks.
So we got this study back a little while ago. We've done a little bit of work with the study as it relates to the next item on the agenda. I guess I won't go into a huge amount of detail. Just want to make sure the council has a copy of this to review. To my mind, page 22 would be a good page to look at. Page 22 has the future forecast if we were to expand the current store, what future revenues might look like. And page 25 has the future forecast for a new store, 7,000 square foot sales floor, which would be, you know, a little more than 3 times the current sales floor. For what it's worth, at least on the new site or on the new building analysis, the results did match up fairly close to what we saw in the 2006 study as well.
Does that is that with a different location, or is that just a new store? no
Yeah,
matter what it
the
is?
assumptions on that second scenario for a new store were east of 65 with an ability to catch northbound traffic.
From looking at the numbers here, and I'm just facetiously speaking here, but something food for thought for the council. Let's say we move this liquor store by Coburn's. Our numbers are going to be crazy. And if we gave him, Mr. Becker, correct me if I'm wrong, if we gave him a 7,000 square foot store over by Coburn's, our numbers are going to look more like, do I have it backwards? Page 25 or is it 22?
Yeah, page 25 would be the
that's
new
what I'm
store,
on.
and basically you would take 2019 revenues and multiply it by 1.5. So you go from 3 to about 4.5 million.
So we'd raise it by 1.5.
Yeah, you go from 3 million sales roughly to 4.5 million sales.
And I think the main thing too, and Mike and I have been talking with a couple vendors, and buying power is huge in this business, and I've said it all along, and right now there's a lot of major brands I can't buy 25 cases because I can't fit it. So you make buys like that, you're saving $10, almost $20 a case. You keep the same retail, that's only going to be more profit in the long run. So I think that's what it comes down to. And we just talked, Mike and I just talked with beer vendors specifically because beer is the volume portion of the business. We do 60% of our sales is beer. And if I can buy the big buys that I can't buy right now, my cost of goods goes way down. So I can't buy like that right now. I can't. So a lot of times my prices are a lot higher. Well, if you look at it in the long run, you get your cost of goods down, you keep the same price, you're making more money. It's truly, that's just the way it works. And then that northbound traffic.
Well, here,
God, that'd be
I'll be honest with you. I thought you were blowing smoke, John, until 2 of my buddies this summer alone have said, hey, we were on our way up to our cabin, and we stopped at Colburn's. Man, it'd be nice to have a liquor store right there, because the fact that I had to take a left and go, a block or 2 down kind of shunned me away from the liquor store, and I was like, yo.
And then you got to take a left to
Yeah.
go back to 65.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to hear that right now. But they did stop at Coburn's because it was convenient. And then to hear that, I was like, oh, man, I don't want to hear that. That's 2 people. I mean,
The only thing's missing over there is a bait store and a liquor store. Got gas and food.
Mr. Becker, do we know how crazy the numbers have to get for us to pay for a brand new store?
Yeah, we can address that in the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Even though it's titled Public Safety Building, one of the options includes a new store.
And that's what the study came up with? They said new store is one of the options?
Yeah, that's a good point, is the study looked at primarily two scenarios. One was just expanding the current site, the other was to go to a new facility across on the east side of 65 with a 7,000 square foot sales floor. The aspect of that market study that I spent time looking into deeply was as it relates to providing an option for a new public safety building. And I can kind of address in the next item how those two things correlate.
I got a question. I'm thinking far ahead. If the store was to be relocated, would the existing store work for PD? If there was a garage built on that lot?
Yep, that's exactly what I'll address on the next item if we want to skip to for.
Well, can't we just intertwine these two?
Yep.
I mean,
So-
this is, in all honesty, this is a whole, both of these are a whole discussion. Without one, the other's not going to work and vice versa. So
Yeah.
we might as
So-
well just intertwine them and,
Yeah. So let me-
and
so then
take
let-
the questions as they come, Mr. Becker.
Excuse me. So then let me just set up the E4 on here. Talking about a public safety building, that was an item that we discussed at goal setting, right? We want to have new digs for the PD. Some of the goals we talked about at that time and previously too is we want to have good fiscal management. We don't want to have wild ups and downs in the tax rate. We want to keep that tax rate going down if at all possible. We've talked about wanting to sell the existing PD fire department building to the fire district. They've expressed interest and would have suggested a 3 to 5 year timeline would be comfortable for them. Then with a new public safety building as a desire of the council, what I've done is just laid out basically three options. So after that E4 memo, the next page, the next page basically lays out what options we have for a new public safety building, right? To be able to put PD in a new building. First option is we build a new police department building, and we do that by saving money. And that means we're just going to sock away money over a period of years until we have enough to just fund it in cash. That timeline is about 11, 12 years. And you would expect it to meet that timeline, you'd expect a change in the tax rate of about 7 to 9% above where we would otherwise be. Just with no public safety project, we would be adding 7 or 9% increase in the tax rate. Other option is to build a brand new PD building, but in that scenario to issue debt. Right, we're not going to save money, we're just going to issue debt. We're going to go forward with it right now and run the debt service schedule out, 15, 20 years. And in that scenario, running it out because the timeline is longer, tax rate goes up between 4 and 6.5%, right? So you're just adding that on top of the tax rate. So in both those scenarios, tax rate goes up by variant amounts and for a variant amount of time, but tax rate goes up. The third option that I can come up with is different than both of those two. What it would require is using the data in the market study for the liquor store to establish going forward with a new store across 65, issuing bonds to do that, but paying for the bonds not through the levy or raising the tax rate, but using store revenues to pay for the bond issue. Then that gives us an opportunity, once the current store would be vacant, to be able to sell the existing PD fire department building to the fire district over their 3 to 5 year timeline, which they've said that is their desire. And then once that sale is complete, be able to use the proceeds from that sale, plus some additional revenue that we would put into the kitty, to then rehab that existing liquor store and move PD into that building.
not what I wanted, but I kind of like the idea.
It's a way to get the project done with the smallest impact on the tax rate.
And I think all of us up here, we don't want to raise tax rate, whether it's 4 to 9% or somewhere in between. We don't want to do it. Not what I wanted to see happen for PD, but something's better than nothing.
What were you hoping
What,
for?
I was hoping for a new public safety building, and remodeling or expanding the current liquor store, but there's no way we can do it because it's just going to raise taxes if we do it. Mr. Becker's idea is actually pretty darn good, if you ask me. I mean, the liquor store is going to pay for itself is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and to that point, so then the next page, I've got kind of this grid work of, and hopefully it showed up in the PDF version of the scan. I've got kind of grid work where I just ran out what the projected revenues would be, projected expenses, net income, these kinds of things, and then did that for various store sizes. The original market study was for a 7,000 square foot sales floor, and I said, well, what if we don't go that big? What if we say we're gonna spend less building, say a 6,000 square foot sales floor or 5,000? And when I run the numbers and use their projected revenues, plug in my projected expenses, and try to be, when I'm doing this, I am trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to put down numbers that I think are worse than I really expect to have happen. I run out the net income and the net cash available. I account for the debt service on the full bond, and I look at what the ending cash flow is, like how much cash is left at the end of each operating year for each store size. Doing a 5,000 square foot sales floor does not work, and even a 6,000 square foot sales floor does not work. But once you get to 7, it starts to look pretty good. Reason being is that if you're going to build a new store, you have certain fixed costs that just don't change based on the square footage, right? So you have certain site costs and contingency costs that just don't go away. So you have a certain minimum investment, whether you're at 5,000 square feet or 7,000 square feet.
So what does change the amount of revenue generated per square feet? Is that, I mean, that doesn't change, but we generate more revenue because we have a bigger store?
Yeah, you definitely generate more revenue with more sales floor square feet. You also lower expenses when you have more sales floor square feet. When John has 7,000 square feet of sales floor, and in this plan, a 500 square foot beer cave besides, in addition to, 18 cooler, what did we come up with, 18 or 24 cooler doors?
24, yeah.
When he has that kind of space, he can buy in bulk and get a steep discount. We went to one vendor just to verify all this, and we picked one vendor. Well, we met with more than one, but we had one vendor in particular we do basically just beer with, and we said, all right, based on 2019 purchases, if those 2019 purchases had been in bulk, if John could have gotten to that best price tier, how much would John have saved in 2019 on purchases with just you for just beer? And they said he would have saved $60,000.
Does that pay for the store $60,000 a year, or what does that $60,000 do?
So $60,000 would then reduce your expenses. And in this analysis, that $60,000 is accounted for in here. What I didn't do is I did not, because I want this to be a worst case scenario, not a best case scenario. I did not account for the additional revenue. Remember, in 2019, we're talking about $3 million in sales, and a future new store would be at, 4.5 million, right? So you'd be multiplying by 1.5. Reasonably, I could take that $60,000 and say, hey, the savings at a new store would be $90,000 with just that one vendor. For this analysis, all I did was take just that $60,000 off of expenses, and I did that only for beer. I made no provision for a future discount with liquor or wine either. So,
How many vendors you got, John?
Oh, God.
Just guess.
primary vendors, we're talking about 6.
6, probably,
Like,
yeah.
big primary, but in
if he's
total
saying,
20.
If he's saying $60,000 in savings from one vendor, we'll just say now take 60,000 times 6.
Yeah, but you don't know if you buy the same amount.
The math isn't that simple.
It's not that
It's not
simple.
that simple.
And that's kind of the point where I said the beer was the main focus because that's the majority of my business. So I threw that in there with Mike and I to talk about because these guys know, because I've come from bigger stores in the past, and I can't buy like that. If I can buy like that, the savings are huge. You can bulk buy before the price goes up, so you can sit on a stockpile at the lower cost and raise the price and make more money. So that's just an option. As he said, that was just one beer vendor. Liquor, I guarantee you would be higher. I guarantee you that. Because
And then another thing you gotta realize, you're probably talking to your most used vendor.
Correct.
So even if you skew the numbers, it's a bad choice of words, but a good terminology, the other 5 vendors, you could take half of that, so that'd be 30 times 5, and you'd probably be in a safe assumption.
Yeah, and a lot of these numbers are pretty modest. I mean, the part that actually makes me laugh is if you take a really good look at this study, I'm way above the normal average by square footage. I mean, the numbers we do even out of that little store, most people laugh at me like, there's no way you pull $3 million out of a 2,200 square foot store. There's no way.
I could prove to him you do.
Yeah, no, I know,
Yeah,
but you look at those comparisons, and that's what I'm saying. More room gives you more buying power, just like Mike was saying.
The only thing I'm gonna say is I have always been dead set against building a new liquor store. But, with that being said, if you build new PD building, you got nothing to generate income to pay for it. The only thing that's gonna be the saving grace for me in this whole situation is that liquor store is funding it. We don't have to raise our taxes and down the street, you know? I mean, realistically, the PD does not generate a revenue other than administrative tickets. So, where the liquor store is doing that, and as long as we're not cutting our own nose despite our face, that we're still not cutting back that revenue that they put in the general fund every year, I guess I'd have to be all for it.
Yeah, this analysis assumes that the liquor store will continue to transfer $350,000 a year. It's also important to think about too that right now in their current store, John's doing as well as anybody in the state in revenue per square foot. As good as John might be at his job, there will come a limit, and it's probably closer than further away. If that is the case, a $350,000 transfer is probably the best that we can get out of that store. And any increases we might have in that transfer in the future could only be inflationary. If that is the case, we're stuck at $350 indefinitely. If we build a new store and we issue the bonds, we pay them off in 15 years, you automatically, in that 7,000 square foot sales floor scenario, you suddenly have an additional $270,000 once the bond's paid off that is free to be transferred to the general fund.
One thing you have to keep in mind, and just bear in mind what I just said earlier. When you add on to a building, it's about 50% less than building a new building. So you have, just put that thought in your head. So, excuse me. That being said, with the public safety building, we could give him what he needs for less than half of what it would cost to build him a new building.
Yeah.
The only problem I do have is that's a prime piece of real estate. Does he need a prime piece of real estate? No, but for him to go somewhere else in this scenario, it wouldn't be feasible.
Well, since you brought that up, what is that real estate with an empty building there? I mean, on the market
Unless we
value?
sell it, it doesn't do anything for us. It's
No,
just an empty eyesore.
but I'm just saying,
Did we ever do a market analysis on the fire department? building where PD and fire is right now?
So we had the county assessor come out and do an evaluation because it hadn't done in a number of years, and they just evaluated it a few weeks ago at $545,000.
See, and that's what I said, that's what a real estate transaction's gonna look at.
And that's not we have not had an appraisal done or took into account the location and things like that, because that does have good inherent value.
But they're going to look at that and an appraisal value. They're gonna look at what the market value that the county's putting on, and I'm gonna guarantee you, it isn't far off. Maybe $100,000 more.
Theoretically, by state statute, the county assessor is supposed to be hitting the market value with that number between 90 and 105% of the true market value is what they're supposed to be hitting when they provide that number of 545.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Becker, you've worked for prior cities before this one, and you've went through this before. And right now, you're giving us 3 options to where your mind is set on one of these options. I'm pretty sure that would work better for the city, for the council, for its residents, for John. And that would be?
Number 3, I'm guessing. I can just tell by the way he talks.
Yeah, option number 3 is, I mean, don't misunderstand. Option number 3 is not without risk, right? I mean, we can't make anybody show up. But to the extent that the market study is based it utilizes objective criteria and a regression analysis model. It is inherently moving toward the average on all of its variables. So that is, everything that is input into that model always assumes average, right? Your average staff, average inventory, average liquor store manager. Everything within it is average, and to the extent that you believe your future location is above average, or that your staff or your expertise within the field is above average, you do have an advantage, and the market study would not reflect that. It's not without risk, but I think I've put together, and we can certainly go through, if we want, we can go through incredible detail on this, but I think I've put together an analysis that is, I think if I sat down with each of you individually, I think you'd agree was really conservative.
So, we have a fire district meeting tomorrow night, and on the agenda is Station 1 update, what they want to do about that building. Do I have this council's approval to make a deal with them to see if they want to pay for a appraisal on the building, that we would split it with them? Because it's in their best interest and our best interest to do that.
What's usual and customary with that? Who pays for that appraisal?
It goes either way.
It could go either way.
Typically,
It's just like buying a house. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to buy a house. You're going to negotiate? Is the buyer going to pay for it or the seller?
Usually it's the
usually it's the buyer.
Usually it's the buyer.
The
What
loaner.
are we talking about anyway? How much is that? 1,000,
It's probably gonna, I would probably guess anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 because it's a commercial building. So we'd probably talking $1,000 into this, at most. But, I hate to say it, the fire district has never worked as well as it has been as of the last year.
I haven't been able to attend those meetings because of Chief Jankovich requesting that he not have many people in the audience, but I think tomorrow's I'm going to, so.
As long as he's allowing it, so I don't.
Yeah, I'll have to call him.
How accurate do we think these projections are? I mean, that's my biggest concern, is that you have a liquor store right now that I think definitely needs to be remodeled and definitely needs more space. And so, I mean, I wouldn't argue with that one bit. I mean, I think it's old, it's kind of getting run down. I mean, it's time to put some money into that liquor store, but, and you're doing a great job with what you have. I mean, absolutely, I don't think anybody could deny that. But on these studies, I mean, we're talking about a liquor store right now that doesn't have any competition in town, and we really think it's gonna go up $900,000 just by adding on to that liquor store, or, you know, or up 50%, you know, add another, you know, I mean, another huge chunk of sales by building a liquor store across 65. I mean, I think it's gonna go up. I mean, I'm sure it would do better because of more space and because of improving the store, but I just think those are awfully rosy predictions. I mean, you gotta get a lot more people to buy a lot more booze, and, I mean.
Everything,
would
I think
we
everything,
not?
everything weighs together to where he can buy in bulk, that's saving his money.
Sure.
Then you got more room to sell new items.
But he could buy in bulk if he had a big walk-in cooler out the back of his store right now. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's, everybody that buys liquor, if they buy it on their way home from work from the cities, then that's where they buy it. They'll probably continue to buy it there. And I mean, I think we're gonna see more business. I don't disagree with that, but I just think to say you're gonna add, almost $1 million in sales by improving the building we have, or you're gonna add, what is it, $1.5 million by building a new building across 65, I don't think it's gonna be that high. And, I mean, if you look at Mike's projections there for cash flow on the debt service, and, I mean, you're taking an awfully big risk to make just a small amount more until that's paid off, and that's assuming that it does well.
I do have to say one thing is wine is a huge seller, and John might tell me if I'm wrong, but they don't have the space for all the wine that he needs.
No, and I don't disagree.
If you walk into the Northbound Liquor, they're gonna have twice,
Well, probably more.
3 times.
3 times the wine selection. And I'm telling you, wine is a big selling item, believe it or not. You go to Total Wine and More.
Yeah, it's
My
still
daughter
good,
goes,
yeah.
makes a trip down there. I gotta drive her down there to go to these dang places. And I'm telling you, she walks out of there spending $300
It's still a
because
lot
they
of-
have the wine that she wants. And I'm gonna be honest with you, his prices aren't that far off of Total Wine and More's prices.
And I think John does well in wine sales, but I don't think he does as good as he could do if he had more room.
And
That's the highest profit margin in the store, is wine.
And then second of all the microbreweries that they have, that they're coming out with now.
You give John more room, he can start asking those microbreweries if he can sell their product in his liquor store, there's more revenue. I
I'm
mean,
not saying he doesn't need more room. I'm just saying, taking on a huge project,
well,
taking out lots of debt.
The biggest thing that I see here,
And I don't think you're gonna see the kind of returns that this is projecting. Do we have any record of how well their projections have panned out for other places in the past, or?
we had these guys do a study in 2006.
2006, which was pretty modest, if you look at that. We probably still can pull that up. If you look at it, I blew those numbers out of the water. Let's
You
just
look-
put it that way. It's
Look
not
at
even close.
the stores that are on the east side as you head north, from Blaine all the way past Mora. Every single one, except for ours.
Well, that's what happened with my 2 buddies, was they went to Coburn's and then they stopped in Mora.
Well, I think that's where we
Because
have
it was
to
more
look is
convenient.
the Colburn side of things. I mean, Colburn's is out on the highway for a reason. They did their research and put it.
Right, but I truly believe that if you could stop at Coburn's and they start to leave knowing that, hey, I gotta get to the liquor
Yeah,
store before I go
I'm
to the
agreeing- I'm
cabin,
agreeing
oh,
with
there's
you.
one right there.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Councilman Gordon, you gotta realize, I've been on this side of just adding on to that liquor store, and I would argue with every one of you, and Mayor Johnson can contest to this, and I still don't wanna build a new store.
He doesn't.
But the liquor store will fund that repayment without raising taxes. If we had to build a new PED building right now,
We're gonna
we're
raise
gonna have to raise
taxes.
taxes to do it, because they have no way to generate that income.
And for everybody to get a piece of the pie and to feel, fire department, let's face it, the fire department's outgrowing that building,
They want it.
and they want it.
They have wanted it for the last 4 years.
I'm there on a pretty regular basis, and I can tell you that, yeah, they may say it's outgrowing it, but I mean.
They're hanging
it's-
stuff on the wall.
I know, but it's doable. I mean, I don't think it's outgrown to the point.
No,
where-
well, they want, the fire district
I know.
wants it itself.
The
not
fire-
just-
yeah.
Not just the fire department, the fire district wants it as much.
So if the
as-
fire district wants it, well then, what do we do with PD? That's kind of where we're sitting.
What if we sold the liquor store? I mean, what's the value if we were to open it up and we sold the liquor store? What could you get for that? I mean, to put toward the police department, and maybe to replace the income that you come from the liquor store now, you have a tax on the liquor stores.
Possible $900,000 a year.
I know you're not gonna.
Liquor store would generate for the general fund.
Well, if you're trying to replace that 350 is what I'm saying.
It would take they would have to sell it for more than it's worth to cover that loss that we're gonna have.
Right, but I'm not saying you're gonna recover all of it, but, I mean, what if we were to sell, you know, the liquor store and open it up and because, I mean, are the grocery stores gonna get alcohol too, and the gas stations? And, I mean, can we really stop that as a council if that comes next year? I mean, do we really wanna spend all this money on it?
If we don't have a muni,
What was the last comment there?
Well, I mean, everybody's talking like the liquor sales in grocery stores and gas stations are gonna be a thing that's
Oh,
gonna
I
be
see what
coming.
you're saying.
So, I mean, are we gonna build this huge store and then every other place that you can go to is gonna be able to sell liquor?
It's all by municipality, so it couldn't happen here. As
Okay.
long as a municipal liquor store is here, it cannot happen. So,
So if we
But that's
sold our
all
liquor store,
legislative
then we're
process.
giving them that upper hand.
And then the next thing is, every gas station and grocery isn't gonna have what he has in the store. So personally, myself, and I haven't drank in 32 years, 31 years or whatever it is.
31.
Yeah, if I'm gonna drink, I'm gonna go get hard liquor. I ain't gonna buy 3-2. And if they got what I want and they don't have it at the grocery store, I'm not wasting my time to go over there.
I mean, I'm just looking for a way to play for the police station. I mean, if you sold the liquor store, you know, maybe you could say, hey, well, we won't let any competition come into town for a certain amount of years, or, I mean, I don't know how we could do that, or what our options are on that, but I mean, that's obviously got some value to it. I mean, it's a great store. You know, they could move the store across 65 if they wanted to, but I mean, if we were to sell that off, I mean, how far would that go towards paying for a police station, and then, you know, to recoup some of that 350,000, maybe we have a liquor tax. It's not gonna make up all of it, obviously, but
You're taking a bigger hit than it's worth.
let's just see what Mike has to say.
I would address it like this. At any given year end, we always have significantly less than $1 million of inventory, right? So that's a significant part of a sale, right? The idea that we'd be selling the inventory. The building, current assessed value, I think, is 354. I think is the number. You know, so right there, you know, somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million of just straight assets, just that. Now, of course, they would pay a premium for future revenue, right? Generally, on a business transaction, if you're going to buy a business, generally you want to be able to generate enough revenue to recoup your initial investment within 7 years. That's a rough standard. Given all of that, and the notion that even if we sold the entire thing for $3.5 million, that would only cover 10 years of our general fund transfer and still leave nothing for the PD building. So, you know, I would be.
What do you mean it would leave nothing for the PD building?
If I was going to say that I wanted to sell the liquor store, all the inventory, the whole shoot and match, and I could get 3.5 million. That 3.5 million has only covered our general fund transfer for 10 years. And then that entire 3.5 million is exhausted, less any interest that we would have earned in the meantime.
Right, but let's say, so you're getting 3.5 million today that you owe nothing against, right? And you want to build a police station for 2.5 million, right? Is that what the number was?
Yeah, current is
So then we'd still have $1 million left over that we could do something with.
That'd be 3 years of our transfer
And
from
I
there to the
understand
general
that,
fund.
but your police station, which is probably more important than a liquor store, is paid for in cash. You have no
But-
debt service on that, you have no, you know.
But then in 3 years, we're gonna have to raise our taxes 6 to 8%.
probably sooner, just to prepare.
Prepare, yeah. So we
Well-
ended up raising taxes 8%. And trust me, Councilman Gordon, I'm all on board with what you're thinking, but I don't think, those numbers don't work for me.
But I mean, and then if you have a tax on the liquor sales in town too, and you let all of this competition happen, I mean, maybe that 5% tax or whatever that we have on liquors in town, if Coburn's is selling it and Quick Trip is selling it, and the liquor store, the guy buys that, or maybe another liquor store comes in, I mean, maybe that 5% goes a long ways towards recouping that 350,000, and you paid cash for a police station. That's all I'm.
You can't
Yeah.
raise the tax rate in a city. You can't do that for liquor.
Are you
That's
sure?
against the law, is it
Yeah,
not?
for a municipality to levy a local tax like that, we have to have a statutory authority. So for example, a common one would be just a broad general sales tax, and again, that is enacted only by the authority of statute, right? So state statute lays out the process by which that happens and the terms and how long that goes on. Same with lodging tax, right? There's a specific carve-out in state statute that allows you to do that and again prescribes certain terms. But to my knowledge, there's nothing in statute that would allow us to tax just alcohol sales. So barring legislative action at the state level, I don't think we have a way to do that.
And I get what you're saying, Councilman Gordon. I totally get what you're saying, but I think it would be hurting us more than helping us if we sold that liquor store.
What were you gonna say, Joseph?
I was gonna say, what Cambridge did is they raised just a general sales tax, so they went through the legislative process to do that, just for general sales tax. That's something that the city could do, going through the process.
Their sales tax that they raise is only allotted for 3 things that money can go towards. It doesn't go in the general fund. Only they had to actually declare it to go to certain projects.
Correct.
One of which is road construction, library, and I can't remember what the third
Parks,
one's.
right?
Parks and Rec. That's all they can spend that money on.
So we got our hands tied
Either
three different
way.
directions.
Yeah.
And that's for only a certain period of time, and then
Go ahead, Mr. Becker.
So I just want to address be a little more direct in addressing a couple of your questions. If I'm remembering correctly from the rate study, current market share is at 24%, and they project it going to 32%, and that is largely due to northbound traffic on 65. I mean, that's the bulk where it is. To an economist's mind, it doesn't make any sense to believe that within the city limits of Isanti that there is room for excess consumption, right? I think anybody who wants to consume alcohol within city limits, who lives in city limits, is already consuming all that they care to consume. The additional sales is coming from that northbound traffic. That is the key in getting a good location that makes that access easy and convenient is where that additional revenue ultimately comes from.
We would possibly take away from, as my 2 buddies did, they went to Colburn's and then they went to Mora to a liquor store because it was convenient, so we could possibly be taking that revenue.
I think that if we're gonna go this route, the goal in building that new store should be to make that the easiest stop going north on 65, period. And if possible, the easiest stop going north statewide, period. The easier you make that, I mean, because quite frankly,
And the most visible. You
people,
have to be-
people,
yeah,
people going
visibility
north,
is important.
people going northbound that have an intent to stop and buy liquor. If you're hauling a boat trailer or a 26-foot ice castle or whatever as you're heading north, price is not a super big consideration. That's not to say we don't want to be convenient, to be competitive, but convenience is the thing at that point. And if you can be convenient, you can scoop up a considerable amount of that. The other point, we can certainly try to find other studies that Dakota Worldwide has done and see how those have panned out for other stores. I don't know that they're going to give that to us, just here you go. But John, probably through MMBA, could probably locate at least a couple that we can compare and say, hey, they had a study in 2008 or 2012, and we can see how that has panned out. We can certainly do that and bring that back to the council.
We do share information, so I can.
That was one thing I looked at, Councilman Gordon, was they did do the study in 2006, and that was kind of my tipping point of saying, okay, let's have them do it again, was I looked at that study, and the numbers that they projected weren't even close to what he's actually doing. He's well over. And by me saying well over, I think you blew him out by, I want to say hundreds of thousands of dollars. Did you not,
It was
John?
almost $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, it was like huge
So
compared to
they're off by $1 million?
to our
I know
positive.
what
To your bottom.
So what I'm
Could they
s-
just as easily be off by $1 million the other way? That's what I'm concerned about.
I understand what you're saying, but now what if they're saying we could go from 3 million to 4.5 million, and he actually does 5.5
That'd be
million?
excellent.
I believe
It's kind of a
He
roll of the
brings up a good
dice.
point. It could go $1 million the other way.
It could, but it's a roll of the dice. I mean, what are we? I mean,
The old one too does not include, if I remember correct, in 2006, it did not include relocating it to the east side. That was just adding on to
No.
the current building in the same location.
No, the
So-
2006 one did run multiple scenarios, and it did have
It
an
did?
east location,
did.
On
but
the
it
east
was,
side?
it identified a different location to the east than what our preferred location was, but it did.
Well,
it
Colbert
did look
wasn't
at that.
over there at the time. I think Colbert has got to be a big draw with a liquor store. If you could be.
Yeah.
right.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I think most of you all know up here, I've been dead set against building a new liquor store for a long time. And if we're gonna do what we're talking about doing, scenario 3 is the best option with the least impact on our residents.
I agree.
Councilman Gordon, I love you to death because you're always watching for that, saving that buck. You know, you're watching for that, but I honestly think that is our best option.
We're not raising taxes.
I don't want to raise taxes.
That perks my
period.
ears.
I don't even want to raise taxes if we get our LGA funds cut.
Well,
We
my
got to
que-
figure out how we're going to do that. So, with that being said, I mean, I think our option 3 is right down
Our alley.
our alley. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have been dead set against building a new liquor store, 100%. But the more I think about it, if the liquor store generates that much income and it pays for that debt and still giving us our money into our general fund every
Either way, if we make 4.5 or $3 million, it's still paying for itself.
But at
Either
$3
way.
million, we lose that 360,000, don't we, Mike?
So, if I could make one more point. So, not that long after I got here, I was not on board with a new store, right? I think a new store as a standalone project is, it's maybe a good idea, but you gain a measure of risk mitigation when you have this incorporated with a secondary project like a new police department building. What I'm getting at when I say that is that even if the projections are off, right? Maybe my expenses are right, but the revenues are short. Even if we get to a point where to make the debt service payments, we need to reduce the transfer. Let's say we have to reduce it by $200,000 or $250,000, right? That's 12% of the total levy, right? That would be a big hit. That really doesn't leave us any different position than any of our other options for a new PD building. I mean, if we're going to have a new PD building, whether we're going to save for it or whether we're going to bond for it, you would be adding a similar amount to the levy either way. So it's sort of you build a new liquor store, and even if we miss and we're off $250,000 a year on this, and we need to find that additional money by putting it, by levying that additional amount, then we're still in the same boat as if we had either saved for a new PD building or bonded for a new PD building, except the outcome is very different. In the one scenario, you just have a new PD building. In this scenario, you have a new liquor store and a new place for the PD, and it's hard to be worse off.
And a buyer for the fire department.
And again, I went through all these numbers. I tried to be as pessimistic as I could on the expenses, right? I assumed only a discount of $60,000, even though I should have just multiplied it by 1.5 right out of the chute, then added it to the savings on other vendors. Also, this assumes a debt service schedule based on revenue bonds. We don't have to issue revenue bonds. Revenue bonds require a deposit or held in escrow equal to 1 year's debt service and also has a higher interest rate. We can issue tax abatement bonds, which is the similar mechanism that we used for the indoor arena, and get a lower interest rate, not have to put any money into escrow, and still use revenues to pay it off. And then that debt service amount gets still even smaller. Point is I've tried to be as pessimistic as I can on these numbers, and I think that even if I'm, like I said, even if I'm off $350,000 in the end, right? Instead of making $100,000, we lose $250,000, and we have to reduce the transfer by $250,000. All that does is leave us in the same boat as if we had borrowed or saved for a new PD building.
So, John, let me ask you this, just kind of a timeline. So, let's say we decided to build you a new liquor store over there. So my best guess would be it would take 6 months to a year to build. All right? So nothing can happen until that new building is done. Then I'm gonna guess on a remodel for that building, for the PD, would be anywhere from 3 to 9 months.
So here's how the timeline will work out. Best case scenario, the new liquor store is done by Thanksgiving 2021. Best case scenario. If that really doesn't work out, you simply move the timeline back, probably back a whole year, because you want to be bidding at the correct time of the year. If you bid at the wrong time of the year, your contractor is just going to take you. So if you miss that deadline of being able to bid that in January or February of 2021, then we just go out 1 year. At that point, once the old store is empty, and the vendors would be required to move the inventory, FYI. Once that store is empty, and now we're into negotiations with the fire district about how do we, what is the sale price? What are the terms? Are you guys going to pay in one lump sum? Is it over 3 years, over 5 years? What is, how does this work? During that, in the schedule here, during that 5-year period, that store is empty. Public Works has an opportunity to, as they have time over a multi-year period, demo that inside of that old liquor store, get it down to its bare bones. Once we have that sale money in full, right, assuming they may make annual installment payments, during that same time, we've added a little bit of extra money in Fund 920. Now we can come into 2025 and have, $1 million plus the inflation change between now and then, have $1 million to reno that. I think $1 million probably should be enough to reno what would otherwise be a roughly blank slate. But nonetheless, that's how I'm figuring it right now. It's $1 million plus inflation over those 5 years. So liquor store goes up November of 2021. We've got then 2 to 4 years after that point to get the old liquor store demoed and PD in.
Well, I'm just looking at, let's say they fast-tracked it and the fire district decided they're gonna come up with the money and pay it in full. So, my best guesstimation, they would be able to take ownership within 1.5 to 2 years if we built a new liquor store, would be my best guesstimation if they wanted to come up with the money. So let's say, I brought up the topic of if we would split the cost of having that appraised. Okay, so they get that done. Okay, now let's say, we're just gonna use numbers. So let's say it's $700,000. The fire district says, okay, we'd like to do this. What do we do? Well, we got options. We have to, first thing that has to happen, the liquor store's gotta get built. Then that's gotta get moved over to that. So fast-paced scenario, you're looking at 1.5 to 2 years before you would have to come up with some money or, pay it off or whatever, if they wanted to do it that route.
Yeah, I would say if the fire district says we want to go fast, we want to go immediately, I think a safe timeline would be November 2022, unless of course we miss our bid window in January, February, at which point we'd push that back. So we'd get to November 2021 to get the liquor store, an additional year, which should be plenty of time to reno that building. That would put the fire department ready to move in or take over the building in total on their own. November 2022, I think would be a fair timeline.
Okay, I'm just looking at, because like I said, this is on discussion for tomorrow night, is that fire station building, what's procedure, what's going on there. Yeah. So, nothing can be done until we get a number set on that building cost. We can't say tonight and have it put on council and vote on it tonight, say, yep, we're gonna build a new liquor store. We can't do that until we know what we're gonna be doing with that other building. If the fire department wants to buy it or not. Somebody had told me, and I don't wanna mention names, but they said, we're gonna have to have $850,000 for that building. I don't think it's worth $850,000. I don't care where it's located. It's an old building. It's not a brand new building. So until we have an appraised value, and that's what mortgages are gonna come off of, that's what they're gonna wanna pay what the appraised value is. Nobody wants to pay what it's gonna, let's say they did come back and say it's $800,000. Well, nobody's gonna do that unless they have that appraised value numbers in stock, lock, stock, and barrel. So, I'm just trying to look ahead, saying, hey, this is a possibility, but let's find out what this building's worth. That's our first step we gotta do.
Well, I think that I think we should, one of the stipulations of them buying that building is they can't totally take it over till we have a place for our police department. We can't just let them run over us and say, out your police department goes. I mean, I don't think they'd do that anyway.
No, they
and-
don't.
yeah.
They would even consider letting us use it
But
until
I-
it gets moved in
Yeah,
there.
but I just don't think we should just,
Oh, we wouldn't do that. We're not gonna,
I don't think we should fast track anything.
even if they wanted to fast track it, they're still not gonna boot our PD out of there. I mean,
no,
they're
don't
just
think-
not
I
that
don't-
way.
Yeah, I don't think they would either, so.
Yeah, I should mention a couple things here. There's one, there's still a lot of moving parts. Like Councilmember Lundin brought up, is there's got to be an arrangement with the fire district. We would, in this scenario, we still need to acquire land, right? Now, we're contingent for more than one location. We've planned that far ahead, but, I mean, that still has to happen. There's no guarantee on that. Also, you know, I don't need the council to say, yes, we're definitively doing this. We're going to have to just take it a step at a time, and if it falls apart, it falls apart. It just is what it is. But for right now, what I need to know now is just, is this how we want to plan going forward? Because I'm putting together drafts of the budget, and I need to know where do numbers go? Where am I investing my time?
Well, I'm in favor of option 3. Let the liquor store pay for its own building. And if he can generate that kind of money, that's the best thing and the best possibility without raising anybody's taxes. You know, PD is, no matter what we did with PD, if we had to borrow money to build it, it's gonna have to be increased the taxes, plain and simple. But this is the best option scenario for them to do that.
What's the square footage of your PD now minus garage? Roughly, do we know? The existing one minus the garage space, because that's not really utilized.
We
as
had
office and stuff.
Jason Cook from Bolton and Mink tell us that too, and I don't recall what it
It ain't
was.
very big.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we just GIS that on Beacon, just travel blocks.
1,200 square feet maybe, if that.
I think it was a little bigger than that for like actual office space, but yeah, it was not.
It wasn't that
I
big.
mean, the current liquor store is in total, if you took down the walls, all that stuff, 5,200 roughly. So, I mean.
I
worst
mean,
case
he's
scenario, it's-
tripling his size, I
Yeah,
wanna
worst
say.
case, worst case scenario, it's double worst case scenario, it's double the office space, so.
And to me, it would make more sense to have garages added on, so they don't have to brush their
Right.
police cars off to go to a call.
Yep, keeps them secure from vandalism and
How many squads you got,
warm in
chief?
the winter.
4, 5?
6.
Would you, I guess my question would be, do you want a 6-stall garage? It would make sense to have one for every car, if you ask
I
me.
would, well, yeah, but I would go bigger than what you need now, because
We're gonna
they're
grow.
gonna add equipment, and it's cheaper to do it now than it would be to add 2 more stalls in, say, 10, 15 years from now.
And it's a big piece of land.
That's a double lot, and they're only on half of it. The liquor store's only on half that lot right now.
Yeah.
But I guess, like I said, in my opinion, I think option 3 is the best option. But there again, with that being said, I'm going into that meeting tomorrow, and they're gonna wanna know what direction we wanna go.
Well, how long do we have to decide here, Mr. Becker? I mean, I'm not saying I want to take forever, but I'd like to study a little bit more.
Right
You know,
Right now, all I need to know is that the council wants to go forward with this as a premise, right? We have not committed to anything, but this will help me to put together budget documents that we'll be presenting in July and August and start to give us an opportunity to move forward with some of these other details and see how things fall into place. If we don't work out anything with the fire department or land acquisition or whatever, then, well,
So you're saying which plan do we favor? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, really, what is the path that you want us to start planning for and making arrangements for, not.
I guess
you know,
what
we
I
can't-
could do
We can't
is,
commit to any plan just yet, but
well, I mean, we're not motioning anything, but I could definitely go down the line here and ask each council member what plan they're favoring, and we give Mr. Becker some kind of direction that way.
My idea would be, I think it's Plan 3, to move the liquor store to the east side and remodel the existing one for PD and add a garage. Yeah.
Councilman Gordon?
I mean, do you think we can cut enough if we were to do Plan 3 where we wouldn't have to raise that I mean, can we cut from the capital improvements to make that happen, or can we do some other things to not have to raise the taxes? Because I mean, that is the best plan if we're gonna do it, and it sounds like we're gonna do it. So I mean, if we did do that, I mean, can we find a way to not raise taxes and get that done?
Yeah, Josie and I have already started working on that and started going through the first drafts of the operating budget and capital improvements budget. I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth, but the way things are sizing up right now, it looks to me like even with this Plan 3 arrangement into the budget, right now, our tax rate would go down 3%, even with that addition. Now, we're a long way from, I know that sounds great. We're a long way from December, and Josie and I will continue to make some tweaks before we even present in July and August and have that preliminary in September. But what I'm saying is that I'm hopeful that even with the extra money that we would need to sock away for the remodel and the PD, I'm optimistic that we're going to at least have a level tax rate.
And that's without taking out, that's not taking debt for the police department, the $1 million. We're taking the debt on for the liquor store, and liquor store is servicing its own debt.
Yep.
And then the police department, we're paying cash for that, and you think we can get that done without raising taxes?
I think that's exactly what it looks like right now.
Then the main risk we're taking is will we actually be able to service the debt? And
yes,
like you said, if we can't, then you're still kind of in the same boat as you would be with the first two options. So yeah, I mean, if I was to be for it, I would be for option 3. So
Councilman Burgley?
Well, I haven't studied the numbers enough to give a real solid direction, but I've always trusted the staff, and I watched when we had the liquor committee. I always thought Mr. Becker did a great job in putting the numbers together, and John and Mike talked a lot, and they talked a lot in front of us, and I was always impressed with how they handled the numbers. So, but the general direction I would go right now would be number 3.
And myself would be number 3 as well, Mr. Becker. So you're getting a unanimous count on option 3.
okay.
Mayor, I have a question. So would we like to add it to the agenda tonight, this evening of City Council, to authorize staff to engage in an appraisal or like a authorization for, to pay for up to 50%? Or do you want that to come back to the following council meeting after you've had a chance to talk to the fire district? What are your thoughts?
I think if it's 50%, I'd say go ahead and do it.
I would agree.
If we think that that might be the case, we may want to add it tonight, so then you could go to the fire district, Councilmember Lindeen, and tell them the city will pay for half. If you pay for half, let's find out what it's worth.
One thing I gotta say about the fire district, the more we're straight honest with them, the more things are gonna work in our favors more so than not. We lost, a year ago, the problem child with the fire district left, and now we have another one from a different township. So Mayor Johnson knows who I'm referring to on that one, both of them. But
I think they're related.
yeah, but it's never been as cohesive as it is now, as long as I've been on there. So the more we're straight honest with them, faster we can give answers. Maybe sooner or later this other party will give us some answers on the rest of it. So yes, that's what I would like. So we could put it on the agenda and then we can vote on it tonight.
Any disagreements with that?
Do we have a limit we would go? Like,
It would be 50%. We'll pay half, they'll pay the other half.
No, but I'm saying, is there a limit we'd go at 50%? In other words, if it's $10,000.
Well,
I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm just curious out of the top of my head. I'm just asking questions.
I think, we kind of vaguely looked, did we not? And it was like $2,000, $2,500, I think it was the
Mayor, I
most.
have not looked into it. I don't know. I think that things are specific. We'd have to reach out to a couple companies and have them give us an estimate of what it would take. I don't know those numbers, but just.
Okay, I'm just asking.
I would simply say is that if the fire district is comfortable paying half of any particular number, I'm probably on board with it as well. Additionally, the cost of any appraisal is going to end up getting factored into final negotiations on a sale price regardless anyway, right? If one party were to have paid for the appraisal in its entirety, you would end up considering that dollar amount and arriving at a final price anyway. So I think it ends up being kind of a moot point, whatever the number ends up being.
Okay.
Even worst case scenario, say it was $3,000, it's $1,500.
No, I know, I'm just
No.
asking if there's,
If
there would be a dollar.
it's about $350, $400 for a home appraisal. So you kind
But
of double
business-
that and then
yeah.
double that, and
I
that's
know,
what
business
we-
always gets jacked up, though.
Yeah.
But it'll be probably 4 times that. So if it was 4, 8, it'd be $1,600. Even if, say $2,000, I can't believe it'd be more than $2,500 at the most.
Mayor and council member, for the update for the property of the EDA that they had authorized to get an appraisal from, an update to a previous appraisal was 900. So I'm sure it's somewhere in the ballpark of the 2,000 range, or maybe a little more. They are expensive for commercial properties.
2,500, we could say safely.
To be honest, Mayor, I don't think we need to put an amount in there. I think we can say authorize staff to solicit quotations and authorize an appraisal at up to 50% of that cost. And then once Councilmember Lundin gets, if he does get approval from the fire district, then staff can just move forward.
So you'd say you would want us to look at getting an appraisal company so that the fire district doesn't have to, fire department, fire district, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to go through that. We would look out for that and then let them know the cost.
Yeah, we typically try to get 2 to 3
Yep.
of anything that we're doing, just to compare, make sure they're competitive with counterparts of, yeah.
That $1 million that you got there to the improvements for the liquor store to make it the police station, does that include the sale of the fire department building, or is that?
Yeah, if anybody outside this meeting as well is looking really closely at that, you can guess, if you look closely at the numbers, what I presume the sale price is. I didn't print it explicitly, but yeah, so we'd be tacking on, was it about 600,000, 625
So,
onto the sale price to get to that $1 million today inflation-adjusted future amount. So figure on, we're going to spend about $1 million of today dollars on the renovation.
plus the money from selling the building?
No, that includes. So
Okay.
the total budget for renovation, however we decide to divvy it up, how much is inside the building, how much is for a garage, or whatever the mix is, we're to have $1 million plus the inflation. So you're at 1.2 or something
So
like
then you're taking off, say it's $1 million, then you're taking off, say we sold that for 625, then we take that off the million,
that.
correct?
And the higher the price we get, the less the
Yeah.
addition to the levy needs to be.
So it'd be like a $400,000,
Yeah. So,
by the sale of the building, it would be 400,000 instead of the million.
yeah, I tried to be a little conservative on what the sale price might be, just to make sure that we've got a chance to make this all work, so.
And there's stuff inside the current liquor store, I would imagine, that you would auction off.
Well, actually, a lot of it could be reused.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was our plan, and he didn't even put that in there, so.
Yeah, we'd keep the existing cooler cases, both the in-wall ones and the movable ones, take those to the new store.
This is what I've always found out in the year and 6 months now that I've been here, is staff always overshoots what we need, and then when it's said and done, we've done less money. So facetiously speaking, if they're, it's going to cost us $2 million, it's all said and done, they come in at 1.5. It always seems to work that way. They overshoot what they really need to do. So for him to be saying what he's saying right now, and he's going to recycle a lot of what John has, I bet you they come in lower than what they're saying.
And if we do end up moving forward with this project, all the pieces do fall into place. We are not going over 3.1 million, I'll tell you that.
Has the chief requested a cooler, or you requested a cooler?
So John, you better start a can recycling thing out there to help pay for this, if it happens.
I'll get you the dumpster tomorrow.
Right, right. You wouldn't believe how much is reusable. And I think even Mike was
Yeah.
saying, geez, I didn't think you could reuse all that yeah, all that racking's reusable. That entire cooler actually comes apart. Like a friend of mine used to work for Crown Fixtures, and it's all refab. You just
Yeah, they just
take it out.
lock
Yeah,
together.
they lock
Yep.
in, and you just transport it where you want it and lock it into the next place you want it to go.
Yep.
Yeah, we'd reuse the coolers, we'd reuse the shelving, maybe paint the shelving beforehand if it was cost effective, but otherwise, basically, we were going to leave that building as just a one wall that used to have cooler cases, and that'd be it.
We get fees yet.
So,
Any other comments, questions, or concerns by the council? Staff okay on everything we've went over?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Lundin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Collison and Burgley at the same time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Therefore, we stand adjourned.